G'day guys, welcome back. So in today's video I'm going to have a go at taking the right rear wheel brake cylinder off and rebuilding it. In my last video I went to adjust the handbrake on my Hillman Superminx but found that the right rear wheel was binding. Took the drum off, found that the wheel cylinder is completely seized. I've had a rebuild kit sent over from the UK. I've already taken the rear shoes off. I don't think anyone's been into these rear drums for a very long time. According to the workshop manual, these wheel cylinders are supposed to be kept in place with a couple of U-clips. Check this out. There's nothing holding that in place except for the handbrake rod and the brake pipes. But you know, once the brake shoes are installed, it doesn't move. I've taken off the adjuster and I've had a quick look inside and it's pretty manky. There's a lot of grime and looks like there's been some water in there, which has caused a little bit of rust. So I wouldn't be surprised if this piston is stuck. Hopefully we can get it out. I've got a kit for the other wheel cylinder. I'm going to rebuild that one as well because although it's working, it may not be far off failing, so we might as well rebuild that as well. While we're in here, we'll give this all a really good clean as well. There's a lot of dirt and grime in here. Okay, I managed to get the wheel cylinder out. I had a bit of trouble getting those brake lines undone. They were pretty tight, but managed to get them off without shearing anything off. Is the piston. It's pretty manky in there. There's definitely rust and gunge. That little black thing there is the seal. So this is why the wheel cylinder wasn't working. So we need to get this piston out now, give it a really good clean, put the new seals on, put it back together, and with any luck it'll work again. I guess it is really good news that I managed to get the piston to move just using brake pressure, so it's not completely seized. Actually, that wasn't too hard at all. I managed to get the piston out. I just sprayed a whole lot of penetrating oil in there, and then managed to get a little screwdriver in there, and it just popped out. So that's really good news. There's the piston there. The bore's in pretty good nick. So what I'll do is I'll give this a really good clean now, and I'll probably give this a quick home with a bit of light sandpaper, and get the seals on and get it all back together. So after several hours of cleaning, I've managed to get all the corrosion off. I ended up having to soak the parts in metal restoration solution, commonly known as acid, because there was a lot of grime and corrosion, which I couldn't get off with wet and dry sandpaper. So if you can see inside the bore there, I've managed to hone that out with some wet and dry sandpaper, got all the corrosion off. The easiest way that I found was just to wrap sandpaper around the end of an old toothbrush handle, and yeah, that's come up really, really well. There was quite a bit of corrosion inside these brake line threads. That's all been cleaned. This is the piston. There was quite a bit of corrosion in here where the seal sits. Managed to get all that off. And this is what sits on top of the piston, which the piston pushes against, and then that actuates the brake shoes. There was quite a bit of corrosion in that seat where that seal sits. The only way to get that out was to dip it in rust treatment. These are the seals that came out of the wheel cylinder. So these were replaced in 1992. To be fair, they're actually still in really good condition, but I'm not going to reuse them. This is the main seal, and this is the one at the top. I found it in in the spare parts box that came with the car, some spare brake seals, and I never knew what they were for. But I do now. So the owner back in the 90s must have purchased some extra seals. So they're the seals there for the wheel cylinders. They're sealed, so they're probably perfectly fine to use, but I'm not going to. I'm going to use this seal kit that came over from the UK, and it includes the new dust boot. Okay guys, well I've got the brake cylinder all put back together now. It's back on the back plate, and I've got the dust seal on, the handbrake connected, and the brake line's connected, and it is working. Now one of the problems that we had was the self-adjuster mechanism here was flopping around. I worked out what the problem was. So this adjuster wheel here, this is an adjuster wheel, and there's a tappet which screws into it. And this is what, as the brake shoes wear, this thing spins, and this bolt screws out, and it self-adjusts the brake shoes. This was completely seized, and it's probably been seized for many years, and it had just put a force on this and broken it. So I've managed to get this back on. It's all secure now. The way I had to unseize this was I had to get a gas torch, heat it up, cool it down, heat it up, cool it down a number of times, put it on here, give it some leverage, and it finally broke free. These wheel cylinders are really difficult to get hold of. They don't make them anymore. They manufacture the manual adjusting brake wheel cylinders, but not these self-adjusting ones. So if you can't rebuild these, well, you can send them away and have them re-sleeved. But if you can't replace these, or can't rebuild them, you'd have to look at redoing the entire brake system with manually adjusted cylinders, and that means a different type of brake shoe. I'm going to put some copper grease on these threads to make sure it doesn't seize again. Right, I'll just show you how this handbrake operates. Okay, so we've got the other side stripped down now. It was a little bit tricky getting this brake line off. This one hasn't been off for quite some time. The nut was rounded, so you had to get plenty of penetrating oil in there, and just gently back and forth, and it finally came off. So this is the cylinder. Taking the top off the plunger, and it's actually a lot better in here. It's not so bad, not so gunged up. I can see some looks like there's definitely been water in this system, because there is a little bit of corrode, like rust, goop down in that cylinder. You probably can't see very well. Here's the top of the plunger. We'll get that seal off. We'll get it all cleaned up. Okay, so I managed to get the piston out. I had to use air pressure to get the piston out. This one is equally as manky. Yeah, there's quite a bit of corrosion on this one. but it was still functioning okay, because we didn't have an issue with the adjuster wheels. And there's not so much corrosion on the bore on this one. Right, so after a couple of hours of working on this cylinder to get the corrosion off, it's come up reasonably well. There is a little bit of pitting on the seal surfaces, but you know, this is a 50-odd-year-old well cylinder, and it's still okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. As long as it seals, that's the main thing. This is the actual main body of the cylinder. It's all nice and clean now. Okay, so we're ready to get the wheel cylinder reinstalled and get the brake pads on. What we'll do first though is we'll put a bit of copper grease on these points where the pads attach and move against, just so they don't stick. Okay, I was installing the brake lines, and then I forgot to put on the new dust cover. So that's all installed now, nice new dust cover. So what we need to do now is we just need to get the brake pads back on, bleed the brakes. Oh yeah, adjust the, reconnect the handbrake, get the drums on, set the handbrake, and then this job is done. Okay, so we've adjusted the brakes and the handbrake. I just need to take it out for a test run now. It might need a few minor adjustments still, but everything's working. I guess the key is to keep changing your brake fluid on a routine basis to stop this problem from happening. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like and subscribe buttons, and we'll see you in the next one.